So when women support each other, miracles happen. The challenge with strategy is what not to do. Just do less. Because anything you add creates more burden within the overall system. Working on a Christmas campaign with Coca-Cola is probably a dream coming true. For me, the international experience reinforced the importance of cultural calibration. Marketing needs both. We need data and we need creativity.
Hey everyone, this is your host G, and welcome to yet another episode of the Marketing Bytes Season 2 Women in Marketing. I'm so excited to be having conversations with women who are genuinely shaping the direction of marketing. And believe me, today's guest is all about that. She began her career in a chocolate factory in Greece and hasn't looked back since. From driving global marketing across 5 continents and then shaping iconic brands like Coca-Cola, Cadbury, Wrigley, Mars, Mondelez, and more, her career has been shaped by ambition and impact. Her unique mix of strategy and marketing instinct has led her to launch the world's first Coca-Cola Plus coffee. Yup, you got that right. That's espresso in a Coke. A huge welcome to the powerhouse marketer herself, Evgenia Papageorgiou. Evgenia, thank you so much for being here and joining us today on the Marketing Bytes.
Hello, G. Thank you for having me. I don't know if powerhouse is appropriate, but I'll take it.
You should, because it is one.
Well,
All right. Okay, so before we begin with the whole journey and getting into the whole podcast, I want to start with something that truly threads through this season. When you think about women in professional spaces, what do you think they bring into the workspace that often goes unnoticed but is quietly shaping how things move forward? It could be in the form of the intuition they bring in, their emotional understanding, or even in the way in which they lead a room.
there is something in what you just said, their ability to read the room. After 22 years and also being in rooms where I was not always the epicenter, I have observed that there is something instinctively driving women's ability to read the room. Call it gut, call it intuition, call it just pure instinct. And that has a compound effect in terms of pattern recognition. And I believe that is what makes women distinct versus men. They both have their own distinct capabilities.
Absolutely. And then just building on to what you said, you've spent a major part of your career in very high pressure environments and typically places where there were not too many women in senior leadership roles. So when you approach something like this, how do you think about bringing other women up the ladder and ensuring that they get the right visibility and opportunities too?
Let me start by saying that I have been fortunate to be in rooms where marketing teams were balanced in terms of gender representation. And I've also been in teams where the women were actually the majority.
Okay.
I understand that is not the overall reality and that is not a common practice. I also understand that when you come to who is in the board and in the leadership board, there is still room for improvement to have more women. Having said that, I do support women and people in marketing overall when I believe their judgment is right and they have the ability to make the right judgment and they never let their own enthusiasm dictate what the brand is doing.
Absolutely.
So when women support each other, miracles happen. But we are also ourselves worst enemies, because when we don't do that, when we don't lift each other, then it all goes south. And I always envied men about that because they're very steady in how they approach men.
Absolutely.
Women tend to choose. I wish we didn't have to choose, and I wish we did that,
Organically.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Evgenia, now that we've set the stage, let's talk a little bit about your journey. All the pivots, the reinventions, the moves, rather the bold moves, everything that looked risky on the outside but made perfect sense on the inside. So let's go back to the very beginning. Why marketing and how did you end up in a profession so diverse?
I tend to say that it was an accident, and I believe most stories worth telling are accidental. To set the context, I did not study marketing to begin with. I studied finance,
All right.
and my first ever job was in human resources as part of the onboarding team for the newcomers. However, somehow along the way, and while returning from Italy to Greece, Italy was where I did my studies and I started working. And it was the time of 9/11, so things became a bit complicated across Europe and work wise. There I am in Greece looking for jobs and all the graduate schemes I could join, whether it was P&G or Unilever or Nestle. And I come across an ad. It was an ad by a chewing gum brand.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, the key innovation in that category was whitening gum. So the gum you chew and you keep your bright white smile intact.
Wow. Okay.
Funny enough, it was not the first brand to do such a product, but it was the first brand to actually tell a story slightly differently. Everyone else was very much focused on what dentists claim, on how certain functional ingredients help with your teeth health. But they tap on a more universal insight. When you're flirting, when you're going on a date, you just want a bright smile. And
Okay.
sometimes what holds us back is like, do my teeth look good? Do I have something stuck between my teeth?
You
And
have to create a first impression.
exactly. So it kind of resonated. Now you get me. You understand where I need a bright smile.
Yeah.
And well, maybe that's the product for me. So there you go. I applied to that company. At the time it was called Warner Lambert, but it was acquired by Cadbury.
So let's do the career arc now because I know it's a lot. Starting from Cadbury and Mondelez in Europe to Coca-Cola in Singapore, and then eventually, as a marketing consultant in the UAE. That is definitely not a straight line. That is a series of pivots and like really bold pivots. So, which of these has been the most challenging of all, and what made you do it anyway?
You're right, it was never a linear journey. And maybe it's not supposed to be. The way I usually operate is I see an opportunity, it resonates with me, I go for it. Do I think about it too much? In hindsight, no. Maybe I should have, but I wouldn't be here talking to you if I had. What has been most challenging? The constant recalibration, the constant adaptation, because there are cultural nuances that make the difference. The craft doesn't change. What a brand needs to do, how you build a category doesn't change. The fundamentals are the same, and I like to call them boring but necessary. But it's the people that change.
Yeah.
It's how they talk, how they think. What do they mean when they say something? That doesn't apply just to the consumer, it applies to the people you work with. You have to be able to tune in to those nuances.
It's a lot of adjustment, not just with your move, with all of your bag and baggage, but it's also your mental state of health, meeting new people, new cultures, interacting with different nationalities, getting used to a new country, climate, region.
I used to not give myself credit for the constant change and the amount of change. You don't just move a country, you change cultures.
Yes,
You
absolutely.
also change your support system. Often you move without a support system. And I used to compare myself to people that have stayed in the same country, same company for more than a decade. And I would always wonder, what am I doing wrong?
How have they stayed here for that long?
But it's not about doing it wrong or right, it's just different.
So you've worked across both innovation and communication roles, one that was more rooted into strategy and the other one into more storytelling. How has moving between both these disciplines really shaped the way you think about brands today?
We tend to perceive these two as two different things or two different jobs. I believe they are both parts of the same job. And I will explain what I mean. Innovation and communication sit within marketing. Innovation tends to be about what the product is about. Communication is about the message that we want that product to communicate. But they both need to talk to each other. Through my career, I had the chance to sit on different teams, do different roles, do both innovation, communication. Where the magic happens is when these two are perfectly in sync.
Yeah.
If the product has a reason to exist, if the product has a clear role to play, something tangible to solve, then the communication becomes easy. You know what the message is about. The challenges become when the communication comes as a solution to everything, but it's not.
Evgenia, I believe that in marketing, it's not just about the launches that define a career, it's also about brand innovation. I want to now shift this conversation to your work in reviving underperforming categories and all the innovations that you have worked on during your career. Now, you've worked across many different categories: confectionery, gum, beverage, sparkling water, snacks, even. Each one of them looking very, very different on the surface. But underneath, FMCG has its own current and its own rhythm and its own pressure points. What are the first three things you would do before you start fixing a struggling or a broken brand?
In one word, I'd say discipline. Discipline to do the groundwork. And by groundwork, I mean understand where your brand, whether it's a product or a service, stands. What do consumers think about it? What do the customers believe about it? What does the research says? What does your distribution and pricing show? On the surface, all categories look different, but if you look behind the categories, there is a consumer that is overwhelmed by choice, that does not think about brands. They have a million other things on their mind. And they're trying to make a very low involvement decision, especially in packaged consumer goods. And then there are brands that are just trying to be more mentally available versus the alternative solution. So the minute you grasp that, then it all becomes much simpler. Then you start looking at, what do I have as a brand that I can build on, that I can salvage if it's doing that bad? Where is the brand standing versus where the category is, and is it moving along or is it stagnating? And what is the need or the problem that my brand is trying to solve? And once you have that diagnosis sorted, then you go into strategizing. That becomes the biggest challenge, because the challenge with strategy is what not to do. Often we want to do new products, new campaigns, change the packaging, bring a new ambassador. Hold your horses. Just do less. Because anything you add creates more burden within the overall system. Because it's not about launching something new. Where are you going to place it? What's going to happen to your core? Unless you have unlimited space on shelf and unlimited resources, whether that's a sales force or customer investment or comms money, then you need to make choices.
Absolutely. Schweppes in Southeast Asia has been your standout turnaround. and this was your move into the alcohol category in order to premiumize the brand. Now, that is a complete category reinvention, moving from the regular mixer water into the alcohol territory. I want to know this. What did you spot early on that the others may have missed? And how did you get your board to get comfortable with this idea given the brand's legacy for mixer water?
I would approach it in a twofold way. First, the Schweppes turnaround started early on during the COVID years, where small luxuries were very important for the consumer. And we happened to have a brand that was highly profitable, the second most profitable brand after Coca-Cola, that was not really exploited. And everyone was looking for something new. And it tapped into a need that was there, the need for refreshment in a socializing occasion when socializing was not really an option. So we first started building the brand around that occasion, the socialization at home, through a brand that existed in the market yet hadn't gotten that much love and attention. And the system was in favor of that because at the time making money, and every time it's about making money, but how can you place your bets on something profitable? So if we take something that we haven't really invested in and we invest a little, then maybe that's worth considering as a bet. So we started by building the brand per se and making sure it stands out for something meaningful and relevant. And that is occasion based. As we moved out of COVID and the brand had established a presence, it was a flavor soda and it was a mixer. As a mixer, you always play the supporting act to the alcohol brand. Why not be the protagonist this time? If you have built your credentials supporting very known alcohol brands, why not take the two and put it in a can and then serve it as such from the mixer you trust and an alcohol of your choice? Premiumization became the means to innovate the brand to make it even more profitable. How do you address different price tiers and different consumers? Through the same brand, but with different products in slightly different occasions and channels. So, although the idea sounded unconventional, it wasn't really. So, it was a case of the core being strong that allows you to actually invest in something new. The problem starts when the innovation tends to neglect the core. Does your innovation help support the core? And is your core healthy enough so you can invest more in building availability, mental or physical, for the innovation? You need to have both, because when things go tough again within the category, a more reserved consumer, we had to shift back attention to the core, but the core was always well looked after and was strong enough.
I'm curious about this. Do you think innovation is something that you build into the brand intentionally before you start scaling it, or is it something that grows organically with the brand during the scaling process?
Innovation is deliberate. Innovation comes in many forms. Often we refer to product, but there is pack. Pack is very intentional. I have a single serve bottle or a single serve can. It addresses a certain occasion and price tier. I want to go to a multi-serve, bigger bottle. It serves a different channel and a different occasion. I take it to consume at home with many people, while a single serve bottle is for me and maybe on the go. Then there is glass. Glass is more premium. Glass is something you want to see in a fancy bar or restaurant. Pack innovation is underrated, but it helps you build a portfolio for different occasions or sub-occasions that you can cover different channels and different times of the day and different audiences. Then there is innovation that serves the customer. What we all want as a product is to have more physical availability. And the shelf is limited, and the money to buy space on shelf is limited. But sometimes if you cater a customer with this product exclusively for them, they will give you extra placements, secondary placements. They will give you extra attention. You can do more promotions. Ultimately, the innovation satisfies the customer need for something new. The news bring more people into the store. And overall, your brand, not just the new product, gets attention. So everyone benefits.
Right. This is going to be a really interesting segment because I'm going to dive deep into your work with one of the world's most iconic brands, the Coca-Cola Company. So, Evgenia, you spent more than 8 years with Coca-Cola, and that's time long enough to go from insider to true believer and then to somebody who really understands the systems in and out. I want to know this. How did your relationship with the brand evolve over time, and what stands out as your biggest wins with them?
They were 8, 9 very formative years. I started from Coca-Cola, the trademark, in a very challenging market, Australia, at a time where Coca-Cola was in the news, but not in the best way possible. Sugar headwinds, the company was not actually reducing sugar. Plastic was a big debate, and the category had been declining and the brand had been declining. So you're entering an environment that is completely new. You always look with, as a marketer, because everyone in marketing wants to work for Coca-Cola. It's like, the brand of brands.
Yeah.
And there you are. What am I doing? How are we going to turn this around? And you realize that there is a system and there are practices in place that help hold this institution together.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the power of the people that actually make the brand what it is. Learn fast, make a lot of mistakes, and trust me, I made huge mistakes. I also pissed off the wrong people. But because there are those systems in place, it's a big machine. You have the ability, if you're agile enough, to course correct and move on.
You launched the world's first Coca-Cola Plus coffee in Australia, which is espresso in a Coke. And the penetration lifted to almost 3.1% in 3 months. But before that number existed, how did you pitch the idea? I'm really curious to know this. How did you really get a company like Coca-Cola to accept an idea as conventional as this?
The idea of the product existed. What was my job is, A, launch it in a relevant way in Australia and New Zealand. Okay. Then find a way to make it actually solve a problem. It was well rooted into facts and insights. What do I mean by that? The category was losing penetration with the 25s to the 35s. Those were also the most coffee snobs in Australia. Coffee culture in Australia is quite huge.
Yes.
What also happens in Australia, at least at the time, after 3 p.m., it's very hard to find an open cafe to satisfy that caffeine craving.
Okay.
The company was in a very rough waters kind of situation. A lot of bad publicity about sugar and how sugar impacts people. What Coca-Cola Coffee did and how we thought of positioning, and I say we because I was part of a team. There were other marketing people, there were customers, there was sales, there was the bottler. Is okay. Coffee is relevant. What we are doing is we're taking Coca-Cola, which already has coffee in its recipe. Nobody questions that. And we add more. When do people need a coffee or Coca-Cola as a drink? It comes in that 3 to 5 p.m. where you need to feel uplifted.
Yeah.
And what better way to feel uplifted but with an extra shot of caffeine?
A double shot, rather.
Exactly. What is the other problem that we have in this country? Well, it's hard to find an open coffee shop after 3 p.m. But it's okay. You can find a convenience store or a grocery store, or you can find a cafe that has it. Great. Now, where are we going to place that and promote it? What is the channel or the venue that makes sense, where people actually look for trends and where credentials are being built away from home, in a cafe, in a bar, in a mainstream restaurant? We're talking about mainstream, bottom of the ladder.
Yeah.
And what does that also help us do? Switch the focus from everything else that is happening in the category. Because when you consume things away from home or eat or drink things away from home, you don't really care about the calories. You don't really care about what does that do to me. You just want to enjoy.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, you shift the focus from where the mainstream category problems are,
Yeah.
but you're also tapping on something that is relevant for your target audience and for the specific market. You have understood the cultural nuance. And you use that to help not just the new product, but to help the core. Coca-Cola plus coffee helped overall Coca-Cola being seen in a different way.
Out of all the incredible campaigns that you've run and led with Coca-Cola, which one is the closest to your heart? Like, I want to know the whole story behind it. What was the initial idea that sparked it? And, some of the challenges that you may have faced during that time.
Personally, working on a Christmas campaign with Coca-Cola is probably a dream coming true. Coca-Cola and Christmas is probably as old as the brand.
As Christmas itself.
Exactly. And it's a whole ecosystem. The whole organization rallies behind it. It's not just marketing. You have to work with every single department. And you work across the globe. Because we don't do Christmas differently in every single continent.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it has a very sweet feeling into it because it's highly emotional.
Mm-hmm.
And you gotta understand, it's a time of family, it's a time of warmth, it's a time where people's defenses are lower, so you need to deliver. You need to multiply that feeling. You already have a consumer in a category that is ready. They look for something heartwarming. They look for something to put a smile on their face, to make them feel good about themselves. How do you build on that?
And how do you bring the festive feeling in as well?
There is a feeling behind it. It's a feel-good campaign.
It's the nostalgia.
It is nostalgia, but it's also how you take something that looks simple and make it part of people's lives. People in the different cities have got accustomed to wait for the Coca-Cola truck. And together with the truck comes different surprises. There might be gifts, there might be events, there might be performances. In a way, you also use that to give back. It's like the culmination of everything you've been doing all year round in a very special moment for consumers.
So your story started in Greece and then wound its way around the boardrooms of Hungary, Switzerland, Cyprus, Australia, New Zealand, UAE, obviously. I want to talk about that journey. You've marketed vastly across different cultural and economic realities, a room full of different nationalities, and then to consumers where aspiration and price sensitivity existed within the same person. How do you build a brand idea that actually holds all of that together?
It's a very good question. Like I said earlier, the craft is transferable. The fundamentals are the same. Where we usually as marketers tend to go wrong is assuming that translating a copy or changing the packaging means a brand can travel globally. I don't believe that all brands are designed to travel.
Yeah.
If your core element is the natural, local, fresh sourcing,
yeah,
then if you take that from Greece and you move it to New Zealand, it might no longer work if your whole supply chain changes.
Yeah.
And if the Greek aspect of it was what you were selling. So not all brands are designed to travel. Sometimes some brands are designed to travel, but the way they travel is that you understand that there's meaning in the brand, and that meaning doesn't always travel the same way. So if you take a brand of dates that has grown in the Gulf area, and it has layers of architecture with tradition and ritual and religion and hospitality and family, and you strip it away from all that and you place it in on a European supermarket shelf where dates are a niche health snack or superfood, then it's not gonna fly.
It's not even going to relate to the consumers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So sometimes it might be better to just keep the product, launch a new brand, give it a meaning that is locally relevant and resonating.
Yeah.
So for me, the international experience reinforced the importance of cultural calibration. Yes, consumers are similar in the sense they experience the same needs, they have the same fears. Yes, the need states tend to be common, but you cannot neglect the local nuance. And the moment you realize that, then that's where the magic, in my opinion, happens.
Absolutely. If you had to pick a certain market or a region that you have worked in previously, which one would it be that actually surprised you about, like maybe you had certain, let me not use the word assumptions, but something that challenged your beliefs as well?
I find Singapore to be a market and a country that challenges a lot of the things you know, because Singapore sits in the intersection of develop and developing. It looks traditional, but it's very modernized. It is a market where you can test a lot of things, and the market that is thirsty for testing new stuff. But it's also the market where you can fail a lot and still not cost you much and move on.
So, you've seen firsthand how different markets and economies and cultures operate within one region. And if you take all of your international experience together, what are your views on the UAE region or the GCC region? And what is it about this place that stands out the most to you in comparison to the ones that you've already been in?
Very good question. I'm not sure I'm using the right words to describe it, but in my experience, UAE and the GCC move faster but slower, if that makes any sense.
How would you say that?
It feels that the pace is really slow, or the way of life feels slower. But the way you operate in business is probably more agile than any other place I've lived and worked. The environment overall, because it's an environment that is rich in investment, helps. When investment is available and money is available, the risk for failing or the risk for mistakes all of a sudden is no so difficult to bear. It's a different reality of its own, and I'm glad I got to experience it. When it comes to agility, I believe that's where the country, but also the marketers in the country, are above, the global average.
Evnia, I'd love to understand what truly drives you in marketing, what it takes for you to lead a marketing function so well and then to build a brand that genuinely connects with people. I feel that in today's marketing landscape, there's a constant tussle between data driven decision making and creative intuition. And for you, having worked across both, where do you personally land at that?
There is a misconception that those are two different things, but they are two things of the same discipline. So marketing needs both. We need data and we need creativity. One does not exclude the other. And I believe the tussle you mentioned is between performance marketing
Yeah.
and then brand equity building. And again, they are part of the same job, just within a different time frame. The marketers that understand that and do both are the ones that I believe are better at marketing and better at convincing an organization behind the importance of marketing. You've been trained to look beyond the data and using your intuition to translate that data into something more forward thinking is where the value is being added.
You've sat on executive committees and led a team of over 20 people
Yeah.
at one time. Now, from the outside, your career looks like a series of wins. But what's the shadow side? I'd like to know that. Something that takes up almost 70 to 80% of your energy, but not always makes it as a post on LinkedIn.
It looks like constant winning, but it's not. 80% of our time after a certain level in your career is spent on managing people, relationships.
Yeah.
Time and the resource it takes to manage people and build those relationships is what does not necessarily make it on any LinkedIn post or any resume.
Can you take our viewers through a real life crisis that you may have faced, and then what went wrong and how did you navigate out of that situation to bring things back on track?
There was a time in my career that I was also managing consumer complaints. And when
The
you
toughest
deal,
job of all, is it?
it's not fun. And when you deal with food or anything that is consumed, it increases the anxiety. I mean, there's a risk with everything you sell, right? Whether it's a car and someone might, have an accident, but a food that you put on a shelf and someone buys, and then they consume and they feel a bit awkward, and that's scary. When I used to get a complaint, I'd be like, what's happening? Why is it happening? It takes time to understand that, okay, it's part of the process. Sometimes it can be a mistake in our manufacturing process. Sometimes it can be a mistake in how it is stored within a customer. Sometimes it is how the consumer has kept it in the cupboard. And what it taught me about is don't panic, because it doesn't help.
Yeah.
But also do not invalidate how a person feels or thinks. You can't go to someone that bought your product and say that did not happen. It did happen.
Always listen and address.
Yeah. First, you gotta start with acknowledging it happened, and it is someone's reality. And their reality also shapes their perception. The sooner you acknowledge there is a problem, then the easier it becomes.
So, we've talked a lot about marketing today: brands, FMCG, reinventions, brand innovations. Let's shift gears to the future now. I know that you champion evidence based marketing, but you've also run and led campaigns that have looked completely unhinged on paper. There's Coke with espresso, Coke with coffee, alcohol in Schweppes, Christmas nostalgia over novelty. In an era of measurement, obsession, and performance marketing, what do you think is at risk of disappearing in the future?
Taste and judgment. The difference between conventional and unconventional is actually none. The importance is to understand what the room you're presenting at is struggling with and give them a solution for it. Things that are becoming more and more important in the future, considering also all the technologies we are surrounded and the AI noises, taste. And taste you cannot teach to people. Taste you bring with you, and taste can be subjective, but it's very important. And also judgment. No technology can give you that.
Absolutely. Human judgment.
Yes.
So, with AI and technology evolving so quickly, where do you see marketing innovations coming from in the future? Is it from MarTech, from AI led personalizations, from immersive experiences, or something more transformative?
I've seen a lot of technologies coming and go or remaining. At first there was mobile, then there was programmatic, now there is AI. The fundamentals remain the same. Technology is an enabler.
Yeah.
It helps make your life easier. It helps make your work more effective or efficient. it does not change the essence of what marketing does. And the minute you grasp that, then the better you are and the more sustainable you are as a marketer going forward.
All right, Evgenia, we have reached the end of the episode, which means it's time to have some fun. This segment is called Sip or Spill. It's easy. I ask you a question. You either tell me the truth, spill the beans, or just take a sip and say nothing at all.
Okay.
Okay? And our drink today is a Vitamino shot, non alcoholic, obviously. So, are we ready to roll?
Let's do it.
Super. Okay.
Okay.
Espresso in Coke or alcohol in Schweppes?
Definitely alcohol in Schweppes.
The marketing trend you'd quietly bury if nobody was watching.
Brand purpose. Never again.
Okay. Someone needs to sip.
I can sip if you like. I feel a bit thirsty.
So, okay. Have you ever pretended to love a creative direction just to keep the peace?
I'm gonna tell you. Maybe I should drink the whole tray. Okay. Yeah. We're not getting that answer.
Who's harder to market to, a loyalty obsessed FMCG shopper or a coffee snob?
Coffee snobs. At
Always.
least the other ones know what they want. Coffee snobs don't.
They're just snobbish.
Exactly.
Have you ever pitched an idea and immediately regretted it mid sentence?
How many shots can I have?
As many you want.
Okay.
As many number of times you have regretted it or not answered it.
I told you I've done some pretty stupid stuff.
We'll have that off camera.
That's refreshing.
Okay. APAC or GCC? Which market has better food and which has better beliefs?
Better food, APAC. Better briefs, neither. Briefs suffer across the globe.
All right. Biggest marketing lies the industry tells itself.
What was the last lie I said to myself? That I know better than the consumer? Yeah, okay. We all believe and act like that.
All right, last one. What's the strangest brief you've ever been handed?
Oh dear. Make it premium but approachable and for everybody. Good luck.
And price conscious.
Exactly.
There we go.
Cheers.
Cheers to you.
All the best.
This was so much fun. Thank you again.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
Evgenia, this has been one of those conversations I didn't want to end. But as they say, all good things come to a close, and so has this. So thank you very much for joining us on the Marketing Bytes. But before we wrap, there's something I want to end this with that really matters. There's probably a young woman somewhere on her commute in a junior marketing role and wondering what it takes. If there was something that you'd like to tell her, what would it be?
Listen to your gut feeling. It has all the answers you're seeking. Never silence that.
Love that answer. It is such a short answer, but it has so much meaning to it. And I feel that it truly reflects how women in marketing can push our boundaries, and open doors to everyone else around. So thank you once again. Thank you so much for joining us on the Marketing Bytes and for your time and for bringing all of this with you.
It has been my pleasure, Jay. It was delightful spending time with you. Thank you.
Super. And to everyone listening, keep shining, keep growing, and never stop believing in your own power. This is me signing off at the Marketing Bytes. See you on the next one. And yeah, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Plug in, power up, press play.